Good morning. Every life has a story, and our life story is really just a collection of moments that matter. Today, I want to talk to you about a new way to think about moments that matter in your life that help to reframe your history and shape your future. 2,500 years ago, Socrates said, "Know thyself." And while on the surface so much has changed in those 2,500 years, there's one timeless question: what is my life's work that remains now? And 20 years ago, I learned about an exercise that helped me to have a new insight about my own life's work. It's called the lifeline exercise. This is an exercise that some of the most successful entrepreneurs that I have known from all around the world have used to discover who they are and what makes them tick. And what it reveals about you through the moments that matter in your life will likely surprise and even amaze you. So let's talk about this new way of thinking about moments that matter. And just in terms of a little audience participation here, I recently read that the average American has 2,700 photos on their smartphone. So by a show of hands, how many of you in this room believe you are above average? Let me just see a show of hands. Okay, so we have an above average audience here. Now, I have to tell you that I actually have 65,000 photos on my iPhone. Now, the reason I tell you that is because what I've recognized is not all of these photos are equal. And as a matter of fact, there's a small number of these photos that are disproportionately important to me. And you see, my iPhone curates this thing called moments, where it captures the essence of events. So for example, it might capture moments at the beach, and it's 10 or 20 photos set to some music that cause me to remember what happened. It causes me to remember trips that I've taken to Boston with my wife and my children. And when I look at those pictures, it helps me remember what really matters. And you know, what's amazing is that you can't possibly understand all of this when you look at 65,000 or whatever the size of your library is. But when they're curated into these small moments, all of a sudden, what really matters becomes meaningful. So I want to show you something that those of you who are finance and investment majors might think is a stock market chart, or maybe even the S&P 500. But it turns out this is the lifeline exercise. And as you can see, there's highs, there's lows, and they're sort of at the midline. And this is a way to plot some of the moments of your life against a timeline. These are the moments that have had that disproportionate impact that we're talking about on who you are, and that have helped shape who you are. And you know, the most interesting thing that happened for me is I did this with a group of entrepreneurs in a special group of about 12 of us called Forum. And in that Forum group, we did this exercise as a way to get to know each other better. And it's a remarkable thing when you tell people, when you share with people just a few of the moments on your lifeline, how they get to know really who you are and what you're all about in a very short period of time. So today what I'm going to do is just share 3 moments with all of you. Moments from my lifeline that I hope will have impact for you. So I want to take you back in time to 1987. It was my first day at college. It was my first day as a student at Babson, and it was my first class with my first professor, whose name was Professor Sadel Sokovitz. And Professor Sokovitz was a force of nature. And when I walked into her classroom, Intro to Speech Communication, which was a mandatory class, the first thing she said to us is, "The greatest fear in America today is public speaking. And the most difficult group of people you will ever have to speak to is your peers, because if you bomb, they will never forget it." Wow. I was thinking, what have I gotten myself into? So the next thing you know, it was my turn to go in class. And as some of you can appreciate, my heart was pounding. The adrenaline was coursing through my veins. My mouth was dry. I was sweating. I didn't know if I could do it. But somehow I just started. And an amazing thing happened. By the end of that talk, I had this curious mix of exhilaration and terror all at the same time. When I sat down, I remember thinking, I am so glad I don't have to ever do that again. So the end of the semester comes, and Professor Sakowicz taps me on the shoulder. And she knew that I came to Babson because I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I decided to major in finance and investments, and she taps me on the shoulder and she says, have you ever thought about being a communications major? Because I think you have a talent for it. And I said to her, is that even a thing? Like communication major? And she said, yes, it is. And based on what I now recognize that she saw in me that I didn't see in myself, I decided to become a finance, investment, and communication major. And that was moment number 1 on my lifeline chart. So fast forward to graduating from Babson. I start to use my degree in finance and investments. I'm working as a financial advisor. And I start a company, I co-found a company that's focused on financial education, teaching people about the world of finance. And by the time I'm 30, something interesting happens. And that is that from the outside, it looks like it's going really well. I'm making a living, the business is growing, but something's not right. And the something that's not right is that I'm in a funk. And I have this feeling that I'm just not doing my life's work. Now, I wasn't exactly clear what my life's work was supposed to be, but I had a pretty good sense I didn't want to do this thing for the next 30 years. And so what happened was that I made a decision at that moment to sell that business and start something else, although I didn't know what the something else would be. And then, like so often happens in life, something unexpected occurred. I got a call from the CEO of a Fortune 500 financial services company who had just taken over in his role as the CEO. And he said, hey, Mark, I saw you give a presentation to a group of our salespeople, and now it's my turn to give a presentation to this same group of people. Would you be willing to help me and coach me on my presentation? I said, I'd love to. And what's interesting, just like in that class, in speech communications, I had that mix of excitement and exhilaration and just a little bit, or even helping him. But what happened is I recorded his video and I provided him with point-in-time feedback on what worked and what didn't work. And as I was talking to him, this one question emerged in my mind. He said, how do I articulate this to them? And I said, you need to answer the so what question. And he said, the what? I said, the so what question. You need to think in terms of what do they actually care about. And what I can tell you is I was sitting in the audience when he gave that presentation. And he knocked it out of the park. He said afterwards, this was the best presentation I think I ever did. And at that moment, I realized something, that maybe this was the next thing. And from that, I wrote a book called So What? How to Communicate What Really Matters to Your Audience. And that was moment number 2 on the lifeline. I was sort of coming off the low there. So fast forward again, this book starts being used by financial services companies across the industry to train their salespeople to more effectively articulate their message using the concept from this book. So one day, I'm in a meeting, and it's 2011, and all of the people had just been given an iPad. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, what if I build an app for this new iPad and we use it as a mechanism to be able to capture and record their presentation and then remotely be able to coach them and certify them? And so as I start to ponder the idea, I decide to bring that idea back to my buddies in this special entrepreneurial forum group that I've now known for 25 years. And I brought it to them and I said, what do you think of this idea? And at the end of the presentation, one of the members raises his hand and he says, I think you're onto something here. And his name is Yu-Chun Lee. And he was already a successful software entrepreneur. And he said, I have a bigger idea for you. What if instead of building an app for your training company, you actually build a software company? And I said, but I don't really know anything about building a software company. And he said, well, I do. And from that, we co-founded a company called Allego. And by the way, did I mention he's a Babson graduate? Just saying. So the word allego is from the Latin root of allegory. And an allegory, of course, is a short story designed to make a point. And so what's happened is over the last 10 years, we've helped to redefine a whole new part of the software business, helping salespeople more effectively communicate their message. And this was moment number 3 for me. So you might be asking yourself right now, well, so what? What does this have to do with me? Well, particularly for those of you who are getting ready to graduate and launch off into the world, I want you to know that I believe college is a time that really helps you think about who you are and to start to connect some of the dots on your lifeline. But it's also a time to analyze that lifeline of yours, regardless of what your chronological age is. And so in preparing to do this TED, I did the exercise again. Only this time, something really interesting emerged. I call it the golden thread. You see, this time, instead of looking at every point on the chart, I was able to weave a thread between the moments that have actually provided a common pattern in my life. Moment number 1 was with Professor Sakowitz telling me about being a communications major. Moment number 2 was about the book, So What? And moment number 3 was co-founding Allego. And you see, that golden thread connects all of them. So finally, I want to let you know that if you decide to do this exercise, you'll find that this golden thread emerges that helps you see a little bit of the future of what is the moments that matter that have made up your life are leading you to. And so finally, whether it's with my TED Talk today or some of the moments that you hear from the other TED speakers, what if now is the moment you've been waiting for? Thank you very much.